Hello my good friends, this is Chaos Angel here, also known as the Lord of Omni, and I'm back again with another flipping reaction here, and we got ourselves some extended impressions that we're going to take a look at, for you guys have requested it. Let's get it. So yeah, we have a video here that everyone from my previous video reacting to the preview of Armored Core 6 have been wanting me to take a look at, of a dude known as VaatiVidya. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Saying that the dude made a video, an extended impressions video on it, and I guess he has some information that you folks wanted me to listen to and check out, like, in order to get the full, clear idea of what we got going on here, especially with the fact of the HUD and so on and so forth. So with that, we're just gonna go ahead and get into it. This thing is a whopping 27 minutes. So yeah, let's get it. All right, Vaati, what do you have for me? What do you have for me, bruh?
As you watch this brand new footage of Armored Core 6, I'm curious, what do you see? Armored Core or Souls?
We're already starting with it. Oh my god. Okay, we're already starting with it. Oh man. Oh, okay. So I mean, shit. You know what? Damn. You know what? I'm sorry. So I didn't really like get into it in my previous video, and you know what? I'm just gonna like front face, like, get this out of the way, put it at the very start of the video, and just get my unfiltered thoughts on this whole entire shindig and so on and so forth, just so that like everyone understands where my viewpoint is, because I don't think I really went into it when it came to my actual reaction video. This video is already long enough, so I just want to get this out of the way. So it's just like the whole entire controversy, or I guess controversy, that has been a thing since the actual reveal of Armored Core 6, and then of course the reveal of the gameplay with the gameplay trailer with Armored Core 6. With the whole Dark Souls and Armored Souls type deal, I can't understand it. It makes no sense to me. I just find it so funny. I find it hilarious, to be perfectly honest with you. And I don't really know exactly where this guy's stance is with it. Whatever your stance is, that's okay with you, dude. It's no big deal to me. I may not agree, whichever it may be, but it's just like, let me just put my standpoint, my stance on this whole entire nonsensical nonsense, and just get this out of the way. So I just need to make this clear, and like, as far as anything that I have pretty much heard and seen thus far when it comes to people putting their reasonings or their arguments on this essentially being a Dark Souls, even though the developers have pretty much said that this is not a Souls game or a Souls-like or anything of that nature, why does it matter? Like, that's what I want to ask you. Why does that even matter? Why does it? Because the thing is that here's my 2 cents. First off, people got to understand, and I'm fairly certain that you've already heard of this. Armored Core freaking predated freaking Dark Souls. Fairly certain that you've most likely already heard that, and yes, that is true. It has predated Dark Souls when it comes to it. And the thing that we got to consider, the fact is that these two games are just like interconnected, primarily because the fact that FromSoft's And I need you to understand this. I need you to pay close attention to these words, this term that I'm about to use here. Game philosophy, their game design. They have been designing the Armored Core games, which have literally been in like development and it has been a long stretching series that has spanned for pretty much like 20 years for what I can imagine. Obviously, much of that core design philosophy that they may have been developing throughout that time, they have used for Dark Souls in some way, shape, or form. Customization. Armored Core has customization. Dark Souls has customization. You customize your character. Is that Armored Core? No. So it's just, and then it's like so many other things. Even though it's like you don't have like things like movement and so on and so forth that are the same thing, doesn't really matter. Point is, and then of course there's the difficulty. There's different forms of difficulty in Armored Core. There's different forms of difficulty in terms of like actual designs and mechanics in Dark Souls, Demon Souls, whatever Souls like, all of that nonsense. As far as I'm concerned, the point of the matter here is that instead of just thinking about the fact that you're looking at a Dark Souls game, you're just looking at a FromSoft game. Why are we not talking about it like that? We're just simply looking at a FromSoft game. It's as simple as that. Like, I just don't get the difficulty. Difficulty. So it's because the thing is that I can't wrap my head around when it comes to some of the reasons or the arguments that are being thrown up. Like, for instance, dodging. Let me see here. What else? Oh yeah, the lock-on. So yeah, I've been hearing about the lock-on, how pretty much everyone has been assuming or making a lock-on synonymous to that of like Dark Souls, even though no other game that has existed so far has had a hard lock-on before. I can understand if many of those individuals have never played a Legend of Zelda game before, as I'm fairly certain some people may already know that Ocarina of Time created the whole entire concept of locking on a target and the camera being transfixed on to the enemy. And that has pretty much been spanned across all game franchises and series and so on and so forth. So it's just like I don't get how apparently locking on is synonymous to that game essentially being a Souls-like. That makes no sense to me. And then what else? Oh yeah, the dodge. Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time has a dodge rule. I just don't know what to say to this right now. So it's like, is Legend of Zelda a Souls-like or something? I don't know. And then, of course, there is the factor that, for me personally, when I think of what could even remotely be considered a Souls-like or something that can essentially be a Souls game that is literally synonymous in terms of the actual core design that makes and break that game, bonfires. Literally bonfires, which is something that is a core concept that has started, has been a thing in, for what I can imagine, from Demon Souls to Dark Souls and so on and so forth, that has started with this franchise, is the very thing that makes what a Dark Souls is. Because you have essentially with the bonfire, you are using it in order to restore your, I guess your Estus flask, your restorative items and so on and so forth. It's used for essentially speccing your character. It's used for a variety of things. And then of course, the one key aspect that makes the game is when used, any enemies in which that you have defeated or vanquished get revived, and you have to go through them again. That is the primary core thing about Dark Souls that I find is what makes a Souls-like or a Souls game. And if this game doesn't have that, it's not a Souls game. So it's like, and if it does, hey, design. There you go. Simple as that. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not really going to care, because as far as I'm concerned, as someone who has been waiting for an Armored Core game, a modern day Armored Core game, the one thing that's going to matter to me is that, is it going to feel like I'm playing an Armored Core game? And from what I can tell and what I've seen so far in terms of movement, speed, and customization, I believe I'm going to enjoy the game that I'm essentially going to be copying when it comes out in August. And it's as simple as that. This game looks beautiful. I love what I'm seeing, and I'm enjoying all of the things that they have added here. So as far as I was concerned, that's really it. That's really all that matters to me. And then again, new generation. This is a new generation. We are literally touching a new scope with this game, and obviously FromSoft need to make their money. This is obviously going to be made with the mind of wanting to expand their reach to other players. You had to have seen it coming. It was going to happen. And those individuals might want to play the previous ones, try them out, and so on and so forth. It's a win-win. I don't get it. So anyway, that's about it. I've rambled long enough. That's my stance. Let's go ahead and get it. If you do not agree, it's each to their own. Big whoop. That's fine. All good. 2 thumbs up. With that in mind, let's go ahead and get into it. So this is effectively going to be like what?
Truth is, there's a bit of both here, honestly. I recognize the 3-dimensional combat of Armored Core. I've seen its familiar mission structure, its atmosphere, and the unrivaled customization potential that the mecha genre lays claim to. But finally, no one can deny that there is a lot of Souls influence in this. This hard lock-on is not traditional Armored Core.
It's
The
not.
pacing and the telegraphed attacks would not look out of place in a Souls game. Even the stagger system is basically Sekiro's. Now, there's a lot I could say right now.
Staggering is in a lot of
Honestly,
games, so
really
it's like
tired of this whole
it's
debate,
not surprising
and
it's going to be
I
in this.
prefer to move on because there is now so much more to talk about instead. So Bandai Namco has given me about 4 minutes of gameplay to share here today, but I've actually seen a lot more than this. Press were actually able to see a live demo of basically this entire mission. And you know the best part of that live demo? It's that unlike in this gameplay, the HUD, the heads-up display, was completely enabled.
Right.
I paid a lot of attention to that. And while I don't have any footage of it, this is roughly what it looks like. Feel free.
Interesting. Oh, very interesting. This is different. Huh. They have a reticle that's similar to AC5, like the target circle. Huh. I wonder what's that down below. What's those red dots? I guess those are your enemies for map. Most likely enemies that have been scanned or something, because let's see here, you actually have a scan meter, a scan gauge. Oh, and there's the repair. Yep. Someone did say that there were repair kits. There's 3. Usual AP. It's actually interesting to see a gauge like that where the AP number is. Altitude. LB and LA. Okay, so those are the weapons. Those are your actual weapon ammo. All right, cool. Okay. I dig it. And yeah, like I was saying, the target right here, the aim, definitely similar to that of AC5. Definitely familiar. Give me just 1 second. I'm thirsty. All right, yeah. Sorry about that. Had to refill. I'm gonna be talking a lot, so it's just like I need to rehydrate myself. So yeah, even though it is already stated that this is not like 100% accurate and so on and so forth, this is pretty. I mean, it's pretty simple and to the point. Definitely different, but I mean the past two gens were most certainly different when it came to it. So this is a pretty a pretty comprehensive HUD that we have here. I mean, you have the usual altitude that you would see on the right side from like AC4 and so on and so forth. Instead of your energy and whatnot being on the left, you have your actual speed or speedometer, whichever. And AP is actually down below instead of above, or hell, and even in the middle, like in Gen 3 and Gen 4. And whatever the hell this gauge is for, he'll probably go ahead and talk about it. And then, of course, there's the expansion. There's the compass. I call it a map, but it's realistically a compass. Yeah, I really got to say, I mean, if it's going to look like this, we don't really know if it's one. I wouldn't exactly say 100%, but it's like if this does end up being what we see in like later previews, or if it's like not the final HUD, I hope that they will show us it next time when it comes to it. I don't really get why they didn't show it to us if they showed it to the people who actually saw it.
Here, but I will break down this HUD more in depth later in the video so
Okay.
that you can understand it all. Now, I don't know why they haven't just shown it. I think it's actually the most genius part about the game that I saw.
Yeah.
I can't wait to explain why, but right now though, I guess I should just showcase the gameplay that I have been given. In this mission, it's our goal to
this ends at
infiltrate this
2020.
huge facility.
22.
It's occupied by dosers, who are addicts, basically. They're people that have been using that substance that's called coral as a drug. But the facility is also occupied by a group of arms dealers who have this RAD logo.
Hold on, let me get my headphones so I can actually like talk and as well as hear this at the same time.
And it's their machines that repel your intrusion as well. In the showcase, From Software emphasized the multiple paths that you can take within the mission. You can sort of see those upper and lower paths here off to the left, and they lead to a bridge in the distance, but this player's build, at least, has very efficient flight capabilities, so they use that to take a more direct approach.
Alright.
So, obviously, vertical and horizontal flight is a big thing in this game. The energy consumption during vertical flight in particular reminded me a lot of the early generations of Armored Core. So you can fly upwards, but it's probably near impossible to achieve sustained vertical flight, which I think is a good thing as it stops you from flying over what is clearly more level design than Armored Core has traditionally had, which is
pretty much
amazing.
That makes a lot of sense.
One thing that does seem different though is it seems like you're way more energy efficient while flying and gliding horizontally in this game.
Oh,
which is something that seems to
Is that so interesting? So the energy consumption wasn't really all that big? Huh. That's going to be very interesting. I really need to see that myself. Okay.
to be partly enabled by the assault boost, which is
Assault
basically
boost.
a dodge boost that can be held for more distance and a continued
Okay, so that's
overboost,
what
so to
this
speak.
this is. It's not the overdrive.
Let me just
overdrive
pause
boost.
here
It's
for a
called the
second.
assault boost.
Did you hear that little beep?
Yes.
So we're now in range of those enemies down there, and if you could see the HUD, then you would know that our lock-on has just automatically jumped onto the closest one. Our missiles are now primed, and we're now
So
in
that's
what
the
I'm
usual-
calling a soft lock-on state. In this state, we still have really free, unrestrained, unguided movement of our mech, and it seems the lock-on can be freely moved between enemies. This should be more familiar to Armored Core fans because it's closer to the way that lock-on has traditionally worked in Armored Core, where
Pretty much.
you're responsible for keeping enemies within your sights in order to shoot at them, and the lock-on kind of does its own thing. So if we fire our missiles now, which they do, you can see one missile fly off to each nearby enemy, stunning them and giving us an opening to dash in and take them out one by one instead. Except at some point, the player
did I just see that correctly?
Enemy, stunning them.
I didn't even
giving us an
hold on. I didn't even see that in the freaking like reaction when I was reacting to this shit. Hell, I didn't even see the fucking missile. I was paying too close attention to the AC. Did I just see that correctly? Did that missile just go through the legs?
To dash in and take them out one by one.
No, okay. I guess I didn't see it correctly, but that is so fucking close, dude. That looked like it was supposed to hit. What's with those hitboxes? How did I not see that?
Instead, except...
Bruh, what the fuck?
At some point, the player locked on manually, and now we've transitioned into what I'm going to call
I guess
a
I should have watched
hard
this in slow
locked-on
motion.
state.
Oh, it just looks so good looking at this dude. I just
Now that the enemies are dead, hard lock finally falls off, but wait, there's more enemies up top, so the player goes up and commits to more hard-locked combat against them. And again, in this hard-locked state, we see a lock that entirely dictates the direction you're facing. And that is not how lock-on has traditionally worked in Armored Core. In fact, the absence of hard lock-on is, I think, actually a big part of what contributed to Armored Core's traditional identity. So instead, you'll recognize this lock-on state from Souls. But before all the Armored Core fans get upset by this, perhaps rightfully so, remember the genius kind of is that the soft lock-on state, the traditional lock-on state, still seems to exist. And I think playing with that lock-on state will be viable, and it will give you benefits, although you're probably missing out by not hard locking on sometimes and allowing the player and their camera to be very bound to a single enemy and have your movement strafe around them perfectly instead.
Just like that.
What's more, in this hard lock-on state, notice how all 4 missiles go to their single target here instead, as opposed to in the soft lock-on state where those missiles were spread evenly around the area to each enemy. That enables some really cool strategy, I think. And speaking of strategy, this player's combat strategy seems to be to use their machine gun to stagger these smaller enemies. Enemy stagger bars are seen here, and they build up visually just like they do in Sekiro, and you can see the moment that stagger...
So, okay. So that's how they're actually building on the reticule here. Okay. So I wonder what else that they're going to be using for these nodes here, these gauges here.
Stagger kicks in here. In this staggered state, they've said that enemies take a ton more damage, and that makes it the perfect time to hit them with all your burst damage, which this player does with their barrage of 4 missiles. Or another thing you can do while the enemy is staggered is this.
Yeet!
You can yeet enemies so far with this kick attack. Though I feel like this enemy only flew so far because it was already staggered, though. In any other situation, the kick attack probably just builds up their stagger meter instead. Next clip. The gate was a major waypoint in the showcase, and it seemed to function a lot like a fog gate would in Souls, except when I watched, the player actually took about 10 seconds to hack open this gate. They were vulnerable the entire time they were doing that, and they even got ambushed during that process. So it's a cool way to sort of stop you from progressing too far. In Souls, you can just like run past everything, so it's kind of good that they stop you doing that here.
Interesting.
But here they enter a tight corridor, and these in Armored Core traditionally force you to fight quite differently than you would have.
You have to forgive me. I just can't. Or right now, I'm just like loving just how smooth this AC moves as it's just sliding on the ground like that. Like, it just
out in the open. Often in past Armored Core games, your missiles would become useless inside, especially if they're the type that fire upwards or outwards, and your long-range weaponry might not be as good either. So that's why it's a good idea to have some close-range parts to help you out in tight spaces, like shields now, or maybe in melee blades as well. Speaking of shields, they've actually added something that I've always wanted them to add in Souls, and that's a timed block system. So what we know from interviews is that shields now have this brief moment when you deploy them where their defense is way stronger. It happens here. See that pulse when they pull it out? That should be a moment of optimal block, and that's obviously an incentive to perfectly time your blocks against strong attacks rather than just keeping your shield active all the time. Next, melee weapons.
Innovative.
You can clearly do multiple
Definitely.
strikes with a lot of these, and having these preset animations makes me think that the blades might be exclusive to the left side, like they are in many previous Armored Core games, rather than being able to dual wield them, although I could definitely
that's gonna be
wrong
unfortunate.
on that. Next, we see the scan function.
It's gonna be very
for the first time.
unfortunate if I can't dual wield like in freaking A4. I was really hoping that I would be able to make me an AC similar to the ACs I made in AC4. I really wanted to have dual blades, son. If it's not gonna be feasible, I don't know how I'm gonna feel. It's gonna be unfortunate. I wanted to go fucking Blade Runner in this shit, but anyway, I really gotta stop rambling on. I'm sorry.
Next, we see the scan function for the first time. Enemies are revealed and can be locked onto through walls. I love this. Being able to peek ahead and think about your strategy is so much better than always being forced to figure things out on the fly. It enables planning based on your build, followed by execution of that plan with your reflexes and your coordination, and that is peak Armored Core to me. Speaking of customization though, next let's talk about build assembly in the garage, which is another huge design pillar of Armored Core. So here we thankfully get an overview of all of the part categories in Armored Core 6. Here are your 4 weapon slots, your 4 frame slots, and then your booster, your FCS lock-on part, your generator, and an expansion slot. This is fewer categories than most Armored Core fans will be used to. Inside
Just
parts, hanger weapons, radiators, those are all missing here. That said, the parts that we do see previewed here do have some great depth to them, so I think that might make up for having fewer categories. For example, your generator, which governs your energy, now has cooling built into it, rather than radiators being a separate part. And
that
then
was actually what I
weapons,
found
like
interesting when it came to the reaction to the trailer. I didn't really point it out, but I did look into the garage a little bit deeper to see much of the other specs when it came to the parts and so on and so forth. And it's like, the moment I saw that there was actually cooling in the generator, I was just like, oh, wait a minute, they added that. So that means that we'll most likely not have a freaking radiator apart, like separate? Really?
Dagger can perform,
but yeah,
now has cooling built into it rather than radiators being a separate part. And then certain weapons.
I almost forgot. I don't know whether or not if he says anything about it, but I did not actually add this in the reaction to the preview. I actually wanted to add into it that stabilizers and tune. As we know, obviously this is the assembly, and when it comes to it, stabilizer and tuning would be a category in and of itself, and it would be out in the actual garage with assembly and so on and so forth that you would be able to select. And I'm just wondering whether or not if we will end up having those in this game. That I'll be able to freaking make my ACs just the way that I want them and whatnot. But yeah, that's all I needed to add to there.
Like this laser dagger can perform a charge attack if held, which
I
is a
figured
depth
that
to
was
the
a charge
gameplay.
attack.
We also see certain ranged weapons that have this charging property as well. And then
So
there's
that
missiles,
was a
which have
charge.
unique attack characteristics, as they always have, but their descriptions here are more detailed than ever. Some are capable of multi-lock, which is when missiles fire at multiple targets, which I showed off earlier. Some missiles are better for AoE, creating a damage area. Some are better for staggering
that
enemies,
so?
like these, which
So
contribute greatly to
that
build-up
must
of
have been
ACS strain.
the missiles
And
that we
some
saw
missiles will just be great for taking out airborne enemies, like these, which
when
are
it came to
deliberately
that blade
slowed down.
combo.
Missiles hound targets during lengthy airborne time, enabling heavy pressure tactics. All these build considerations are such a fun, amazing part of Armored Core that I can't wait for people to discover. And if you're a new player, I think a lot of the time you will be able to get by simply reading these written descriptions. But the real endgame in Armored Core is learning to understand the complex stats and specs of each part seen down here. Though, if you think these stats are overwhelming, I've got news for you. So, this is probably the simplified version. It reminds me a lot of Armored Core 4, where you were shown the most important stats on parts, but then you could toggle the display to reveal this.
Yes. Yep. Yes. Yep. Yes. And that was one of the things that I was wondering when it came to it. When I was reacting to this and so on and so forth. Uh, shit. Someone even made a comment um on some folks apparently not noticing down below when it came to the assembly. But it's like I did notice that there was a toggle display option, and I couldn't help but figure that that might be what will actually show us the rest of the information that is essentially going to provide us all of the other specs that we need to know when it comes to it. Even though what they showed was fairly simple, definitely similar to that of AC4 and 4 Answer, I really, really do hope that they will be able to, even though have the expanded information that they're going to provide for us, still simplify it in some way for newcomers so that they're not overwhelmed with information. But it's like I'm sorry. You're gonna have to experience it. You're really gonna have to experience it.
Yeah, so stats can get pretty intense, and while having a simplified view and glanceable icons is obviously the more modern approach, I really hope that they don't shy away from these overwhelming stat screens because they are such a hallmark of the series. In the showcase, the player actually accessed this garage mid-mission after being destroyed by this quad-legged enemy. Their mid-range biped build was having a lot of trouble dealing any kind of damage to this enemy at range, so they wanted to change their build to an agile, close-range one instead.
Yep.
And they did it all manually, and it took less than a minute, and it was so convenient. Instead of having to do the entire mission again, they simply died, they loaded up the garage from the menu, they tweaked their build, and then they returned to the checkpoint that they had unlocked in their mission. And they were
No
back
shit.
with a different build completely. But as to the a lot of
Hold
trouble
up.
dealing any kind of damage to this enemy at range, so they wanted to change their build to an agile, close-range one instead. And they did it all manually, and it took less than a minute, and it was so convenient. Instead of having to do the entire mission again, they simply died, they loaded up the garage from the menu, they tweaked their build, and then they returned to the checkpoint that they had unlocked in their mission.
You cannot
and they
be
were back
fucking
with a different build completely.
You cannot be fucking serious. You shitting me, right? That's sick. Okay. That takes a lot. Wow. Wow. That is different. And honestly, what one quality of life improvement, a quality of life change. To be frank, I mean that makes it to where you're not really spending too much time. As much as that is like good, but it's like making it a point of going all the way back and starting over on a stage that you pretty much took the time to get through and so on and so forth. It's understandable that some folks will be a little bit impatient. So I get where they're coming from in doing this. It is, wow, that's eye-opening.
Completely. But as to the fight itself, there's actually so much to break down in this fight, but the main thing I really want to talk about happens here, where they finally stagger the enemy. Whereas in Sekiro, this would enable an execution on stagger, in Armored Core 6, it's up to you to fully deliver that execution. The enemy is now taking extra damage, so
And it
if you
looks
have
so
burst attacks,
flippin' good.
now's the time.
It looks
more,
so
it seems you
in
can
the
prolong
slow-mo,
this
dude.
staggered state with certain attacks, keeping them stun-locked with the right combo, potentially, which might give a really high skill ceiling to this whole process. If you listen carefully
I
here,
didn't hear
you can
that.
hear a narrator say, "Alright, tourist, that's enough." That's because
believe I
the enemy
remember
leader
hearing
of this
that.
facility has been shit-talking you this entire time. The dialogue that I heard was witty and well-delivered, and that is a very welcome change from past Armored Core games. There was also some
Cool.
banter between this narrator and your own female operator, who is there to support you through your missions and warn you about what's ahead. And
I
the
dig it.
main boss is ahead. But before this, in the demo, the player actually called a resupply drone, replenishing their health, their repair kits, and their ammo, and then it was time to fight this thing. A boss
Called
that
in a
has its own
repair
health
drone.
and stagger meter that appears.
Called in a repair drone, huh? I don't know. I don't know. That sounds pretty familiar. And you know what I said. That sounds pretty familiar, but hey, as I stated before, I don't care.
Is at the top of the screen. Its attacks are extremely well animated and telegraphed, and it has a ton of area denial and AoE, and it's just so well animated, and it looks like such a great fight. It also has 2 lock-on points, a weak spot at the front, and a shoot at
Okay.
the top,
So there
which
are
I guess
weak
flying
spots.
builds might be able to take more advantage of. I wonder how a slow tank build would deal with something like this, though. It seems like it would be hard to get distance and dodge with a tank, hey? Anyway, as promised, let me recreate the heads-up display in more detail, starting with the most important things. First up is your AP, your armor points, or your health, basically, which was displayed numerically and with a slider around here. When the player took damage, this number and the slider would obviously deplete, and the screen would also distort a little bit, especially at the edges, which you can kind of see here. Then there was the energy gauge seen around here. This was
Oh, dude. I have not been paying attention to that freaking preview. Look
depleted
at the
by
battle
kind of see
damage.
here.
Dude, do you see that?
Then
Look at the battle damage. Oh, dude. I really gotta say, the fact that he's made the slow-mo has made me freaking notice 10 times more stuff than I originally freaking noticed from reacting to the freaking preview myself.
there was the
Like, holy shit, look at that the detail.
energy gauge seen around here. This was depleted by things like flight, quick boosting, and I think melee as well. Of course, in Armored Core, how big this bar is determined by the capacity of your generator part, and how fast it depletes and recovers is determined by the energy output of that generator
cool.
and the cumulative energy drain of all of your parts. Of
So
course,
that's where
the
the energy
efficiency of your
actually is
boosters will
placed.
probably also play a part. Above it was a stagger bar. It was empty by default, but would fill up with
Freaking Sekiro. It's a straight up Sekiro. Okay, so yeah, there you go. So that makes a lot of sense. So that was definitely, of course, the energy gauge. Energy gauge has been moved down there instead of usually being in, well, I can't really say usually, but either usually being on the left hand side or in the middle above, and so on and so forth. I gotta be honest. I'm actually fine because it has all of your information down below where it needs to be, where your eyes will essentially gravitate to when you need to see your information. So it's like you'll be able to see everything while it's without having like your eyes moving all over the place just to freaking understand what is what and all that good nonsense. Okay, okay, okay,
Orange
okay.
from the center, just like this, whenever you took damage, and then it would deplete if you didn't take damage for a few seconds. The same goes for enemies. If you get staggered though, I think you just sort of pause for a couple of seconds, and previous interviews seem to suggest that you'll start falling if you're in the air as well. Next, there was like a box here for the expansion slot. So extensions are a category of parts that have traditionally allowed you to do unique things like jam enemy radar or shoot down enemy missiles automatically. Sometimes these extensions were activated manually, sometimes they're passive, and they're like my favorite part category in Armored Core because they give a ton of character to your build.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure the demo had no expansion part equipped, so this box was empty. Next to it
Of
were
course.
2 bars. One was a visual indicator for your repair kits, of which the player had 3. Armored Core has never had an Estus flask equivalent before, but it does now. These can be activated instantly to heal the player, and it seems they can be
I can't really agree on the Estus Flask comparison, primarily because of the fact that you just said that it was instant. I was about to say, like, I find that to be strange. If this is really an Estus Flask, then wouldn't that really mean that you would have to go through like an animation? I mean, shit. It's whatever. It's just that I find it hard to really compare the two, considering that the significance of like the difference between these two is pretty big given the usage. While this one is apparently instant, everything within Dark Souls and Souls like when it comes to healing or Estus Flask tends to be tends to have an animation that takes a few seconds for the actual heal to take effect. So it all depends on, you have to be pretty methodical in your usage when it comes to using Estus Flask and whatnot. Many of the times you would have to be careful with your timing, unless you'll just take more damage and then you just lose that flask. And 9 times out of 10, you'll even take more damage when it comes to it. So I can't really agree on that, on the comparison there.
be replenished at supply stations, which
that's
can be
whatevs.
called in certain missions, apparently. Underneath repair stations,
wait.
which can be player, and it does now. These can be activated instantly to heal the player, and it seems they can be replenished at supply stations, which can be called in certain missions, apparently. Underneath.
So that so I'm really curious about the whole calling thing, because that is, I mean, is it or is it not something that's similar to that of like shrines, bonfire, and so on and so forth? Like the whole calling thing is sort of like taking me aback, and whatnot. I don't really understand. You're calling for something down, so it's like, are you at a repair station and like a drone comes to you, and so on and so forth? I don't know.
Underneath repair was a bar that said scan. When activated to scan surroundings for enemies, this bar would take a little while to regenerate and then it could just be used again. It wasn't long though, like 10 seconds between each scan maybe.
Okay.
On the
cool,
bottom
cool,
right
cool.
were 4 familiar weapon slots. They
Yes,
showed your total
sir.
ammo and your remaining magazine ammo for your left arm, left back, and right back weapons, respectively. This character has missiles on their right back, a machine gun on their right arm, a shield on its left back, and a blade on its left arm. Now, a recent interview stated that all 4 weapons are bound by default to all 4 controller triggers, and that all of your weapons can be fired at once, which is not how it's worked in any previous game.
Excuse me, what? Excuse me, what? Are you serious? I'm sorry, but wait, I mean, hold on. You were using your assault rifle while also using your shield. So it's just like, maybe so.
That sounds
Maybe
kind of
so.
insane, honestly, and
That is
pretend you're
insane.
holding a controller. I cannot fathom, for the life of me, how you're supposed to fire all 4 weapons with your pointer and middle finger, and then doesn't that just leave your thumbs free for assault boosting and moving and interacting and changing weapons? Just your thumbs for all those actions seems very difficult, so I'm extremely keen to get a hold of a demo and see what the deal is here. There was a vertical speed gauge
We need
on
that
the
demo.
left. There was
We need
what
that
looked
demo
like
from
an
Saul.
altitude gauge on the right. There was even a compass at the bottom that was actually pretty
Yes.
cool because it had red dots for all of the enemies around you, which I assume would actually
Okay.
be pretty useful when helping to locate
So it's not
the
due to the
enemies that
scan.
are just outside
It's
your
automatic.
field of view. Then the mission objective was written top left, a waypoint marker was on screen for that objective, and killed enemy credit rewards would pop up on the bottom right. Of course, as mentioned earlier, the center of the screen features your fire control system, your lock-on, essentially. It's circular like it was in Armored Core 5, and while you're out of combat even, it stays in the center of your screen, and it has these sliders that help you keep track of your remaining magazine capacity as you fire
Okay.
your left and right arm and back weapons, which I'm a huge fan of. So the UI
I'm a
is
huge fan of it
nice.
myself.
It's super clean and it displays a ton of information, but it's this lock-on behavior that I think is the most fascinating thing about Armored Core 6 so far, and this is the part of the UI that I kind of love the most. So again, when you get in range of an enemy, this lock-on element jumps over to them, while the lock-on display itself starts to display that enemy's health and stagger meter at the top, in addition to your ammo in the bottom left and right. Inside the lock-on though, there's this little number which dictates how many of your missiles will go to this enemy should you fire them. Again, if you're
curious
soft
about
locked on, that number
with
will
the
be split
4.
between nearby enemies, and if you're hard locked on, all of your missiles will go towards them. Additionally, the lock-on actually updates with an enemy's distance from you, which is extremely important information because staying at optimal weapon range is a really big thing in Armored Core.
I dig it.
And it also shows little damage numbers which
That's-
pop up as you pop off, and that's really important
No shit.
to give you visual feedback on the effectiveness of your range or the effectiveness of your weapon type. You want to know if you're dealing damage, and I always loved this feature when it was added in Armored Core 4, so I'm very glad to see that return.
Dude, this I'm sorry, but I love this game. I love this game. I'm already loving this game. I didn't really think that they were going to be adding that. I love this game. Dude, that's freaking amazing. Are you absolutely serious?
Even noticed some little enemy status words pop up around the lockbox, like unaware would pop up if the enemy didn't know you were stealthed, and ACS load limit, I think, popped up if you staggered them. So, this lock-on is doing a lot of heavy lifting in Armored Core 6, and I love it. I'm glad they've baked so much information into this UI because that is such a huge part of what Armored Core is all about.
Yes.
And
This is probably if all of this is true, if all of what he has stated so far is true, and I end up seeing this HUD in real life, but also like in another preview where they actually show the HUD, this is probably going to be my favorite AC game, like, ever. It's most likely going to be my favorite AC game, besides Armored Core for answer in Last Raven. I just gotta be frank.
What their design team deserves props for is the fact that they've baked all this information in while keeping everything looking sleek and unobtrusive. It's very clever design, and I hope they show off the HUD soon, because I'm probably just butchering
Please.
it in Photoshop now.
Please,
I have
for the
so
love
much
of
more
God.
to say about this demo,
Just
but
so I
it
can
should probably
dissect
wait
this shit.
for when we get new footage, or for if I get my hands on it, if I'm lucky. In the meantime, if you're curious about Armored Core, then please check out my recent video where I show off every single old Armored Core game. And I think that video will just always stand as a way for you guys to learn a ton about the series if you don't have the time to play for yourself. And I had an amazing time playing all of the old games. But until next time, thank you for watching.
I actually just made this an hour long. Damn it. Oh, I have no idea whether or not if anyone is really going to be watching this. I don't usually get that many views. Damn. I really did not want this video to be too long, and yet I did it again. I rambled on, and it's gonna be such a pain trying to figure out how to freaking condense this down to size. Anyway, guys, I don't really have anything to really add. Definitely have to give kudos to Vaati for making this video. Definitely, thanks, bro, and providing all of this information in a very comprehensive and easy to understand format when it comes to it. And I really gotta say, I need a demo, like stat, like pronto, like ASAP, you know, like right now. Is it okay if I can just like get a demo? We're only like 2 months away, guys. I mean, like, when it comes to it, FromSoft, you are pretty well known for like giving out demos, so it's just like, where's this one? Well, when are we gonna try get our hands on this one? Try it out, see what we think. You know, it'd be very nice if I could just get a taste, just a smidge, not really a smidge, more like the whole cake, just so I can eat it. I want to have my cake and eat it, please. But yeah, that's pretty much all I really gotta say on the matter. I mean, I spent an hour freaking rambling to myself. What more do I really have to say right now? I need to edit this video to even be completely digestible for people of this generation to even watch. Good God, what in the world am I gonna do with myself here? I do too much. With that in mind, guys, please, if you do not mind, if those who are new to my channel and never really seen this video, please go to his channel, go to his video, check it out, give him a like, comment, so on and so forth, or subscribe. Give him the support for the time that he has taken in making that video. But yeah, that's pretty much all that I really have for you. I don't really know whether or not if there's any plans for anything that I have in mind right now besides this, but hey, you never know. It might surprise you. So with that, you guys have a very nice day, nice night, nice morning, nice afternoon, all that good nonsense, and I shall catch you in the next one. Deuces.